Welcome to the Sleepy Science channel, and hello. We will explore a hidden realm that exists all around us, but is frequently disregarded tonight. The mushroom world. Mushrooms fall somewhere between being an animal and a plant, a world of their own. Like us, they breathe. Silently, they grow. And for a longer period of time than woods have existed, they have shaped life on this planet. Like lanterns strewn over the night, some of them glow in the dark. Under our feet, some extend far and invisibly, interlacing tree roots in a coded language. Some include poisons so lethal that a single taste might kill a person, while others sparkle with hues so vivid they appear to have been painted by hand. However, mushrooms can also be used as dreamers, builders, healers, and recyclers. They cause bread to rise. They produce wine from grapes. They are able to rid the globe of trash and oil. They might even give us a better idea of how life might exist on distant worlds. Please feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment below if you like these scientific explorations. One drowsy soul at a time, it guides others to this place as well. Let's start immediately, though. Compared to vegetation, mushrooms are more closely connected to animals. Most people are surprised to hear that mushrooms are more closely related to humans than trees, even though they live peacefully in forests and emerge from the ground like flowers. Fungi and mammals, not plants, have a shared genetic ancestor. Like humans, they take in oxygen and release carbon dioxide. Their cell walls are composed of chitin, the same hard substance that makes up insect and crustacean shells rather than cellulose, as in plants. Fungi belong to a hidden family branch that we almost never consider because of this peculiar relationship. It may seem that mushrooms belong among the leaves and flowers when you stroll through a forest, but in reality, the animals who are closest to them are those that can walk, swim, and fly. Understanding that a mushroom is more like us than a blade of grass can permanently alter your perspective on the forest floor. Certain mushrooms emit light on their own. Imagine strolling through a forest at night with small candles strewn among the moss. Softly shimmering green or blue mushrooms that resemble fairy lights interlaced into the earth. We refer to this glow as bioluminescence. Similar to the type of light produced by fireflies and certain deep-sea organisms. The appropriately called foxfire fungi is one of the more than 70 known mushroom species that can glow in this manner. According to scientists, the glow may draw insects at night, assisting the mushrooms in dispersing their spores more widely. Or maybe it just keeps them safe from predators. An enzyme known as luciferase is involved in a chemical reaction that produces the glow. Fireflies get their spark from the same family of reactions. It is an ancient charm to see one of these mushrooms in the wild. Decomposition gives rise to living light, evidence that beauty may still shine through the gloom even when wood decays and rots. Miles underground can be covered by a single fungal network. There might be a living web that extends for miles beneath your feet, concealed in the ground. Mushrooms are merely the visible tips or fruiting bodies of a much bigger organism known as mycelium. Delicate filaments that resemble threads make up mycelium, which clings to roots, rocks, and even the remnants of fallen leaves. This network is unthinkably vast in certain parts. Thousands of trees can be connected by a single mycelial organism that can spread out over hills and valleys. Imagine an invisible yet living net of life operating beneath the forest floor in silence. Fungi transport water, recycle nutrients, and even facilitate resource exchange among plants through these networks. The earth itself appears to have veins that pulse with unseen threads. Crossing a patch of grass could be like unintentionally stepping on one huge monster that is quiet, ancient, and present everywhere. A mushroom is the biggest living thing on the planet. Something extraordinary exists in Oregon's Blue Mountains. On the surface, it appears to be a typical woodland. Meadows, streams, and pine trees. However, the largest known living thing on Earth is concealed beneath the soil. Armillaria ostoyi, a single fungal network sometimes referred to as the honey fungus. This enormous mycelium is said to be thousands of years old and covers an area of almost 4 square miles. Each mushroom that emerges from the earth is a single, tiny fragment of this massive organism. For comparison, this single organism has silently outlived most civilizations and is several times larger than the largest blue whale. When scientists learned how big it was, they saw that the forest they were traversing was actually made up of a single, enormous, ancient organism that thrived underneath their feet like the earth itself, rather than innumerable individuals. Electrical signals can be used by mushrooms to communicate. Despite lacking brains and nervous systems, mushrooms use their mycelial threads to transmit information pulses. These signals are similar to the firing of neurons in mammals, in that they are small electrical impulses. According to some researchers, the patterns of these pulses even resemble words, with variations in frequency that could have meaning. Fungi may use this system to communicate with other members of their network about environmental conditions, resources, or threats. It appears as if a subterranean internet is interwoven with the ground, sending signals in a language that we are still learning. Imagine mushrooms serving as messengers between trees, conveying the message of sugar. Even while it might not be thought of in the same manner that humans do, it is still communication. A reminder that there are many different types of intelligence and that there are conversations going on all around us that we cannot hear. There are animals that can live in space. Scientists transported fungal spores with them when they explored what life may survive beyond Earth. To their astonishment, several creatures have managed to withstand extreme radiation and freezing temperatures in addition to the vacuum of space. For weeks, the spores drifted outside spaceships, protected solely by their inherent resilience. Many of them were still alive and able to grow when they were returned to Earth. Fungi are intriguing possibilities for astrobiology, the study of life beyond Earth, because of their persistence. The potential that life could move between planets by riding dust or meteorites across the universe is increased if mushroom spores can endure the void. Fungi provide evidence that such travels may not be impossible, and the concept is known as panspermia. Imagine the common mushroom, which is frequently disregarded in the forest, spreading the spark of life throughout galaxies and waiting to bloom once more wherever it comes into contact with light, water, and soil. It has been discovered that mushrooms can grow in nuclear reactors. Scientists examining the destroyed reactor after the 1986 Chernobyl accident were shocked to see anything flourishing there. Fungi. Some species, such as Cryptococcus neoformans, appear to be growing toward radiation itself in addition to surviving in the radioactive ruins. Similar to photosynthesis, but using radiation rather than light, these fungi may be able to transform radiation into chemical energy, because they possess melanin, the same pigment that is present in human skin. These mushrooms seem to be consuming radiation, turning what we see as lethal into energy for development. Future developments will be greatly impacted by this discovery. Fungi may one day shield astronauts from cosmic radiation during deep space travel or aid in the cleanup of nuclear waste. Mushrooms have managed to survive, and possibly even flourish, in the world's most hazardous and darkest environments. Oil and plastic can be broken down by fungi. The fact that some fungi are large-scale natural recyclers is among the most encouraging findings in recent years. Materials like plastic and petroleum, which often last for millennia, can be broken down by certain organisms. One of the most obstinate polymers in use, polyurethane, may be eaten by a fungus discovered by researchers in the Amazon rainforest in 2011. It has been demonstrated that other fungi may break down oil spills and turn hazardous waste into innocuous material. Imagine silent fungus colonies eating away at landfills instead of human machinery. Researchers are currently investigating how these mushrooms might aid in the fight against pollution, maybe creating fungal factories that could consume plastic trash in the future. Fungi serve as a reminder that, if we are smart enough to pay attention and take note, nature frequently has the means to mend itself in a world overrun with the things we discard. Some mushrooms have the potential to kill you in just one bite. In addition to their many benefits, mushrooms can potentially be dangerous. Certain species have toxins so potent that a tiny taste can be lethal. One of the deadliest is the Amanita phalloides, or death cap mushroom. The liver and kidneys are silently destroyed by its poisons, and symptoms might not show up until it's too late. The fact that it appears so commonplace only adds to its unsettling quality. An edible-looking fungus that is somewhat pale and greenish. Kings, peasants, and even entire families who were unaware of the danger have perished as a result of toxic mushrooms throughout history. In the kingdom of fungi, the distinction between sustenance and poison is extremely fine and frequently imperceptible. Fascination, however, is present in this peril. The fact that a seemingly delicate mushroom can contain enough chemical to destroy a human life serves as a reminder that nature, which is so exquisite, should always be revered. Some have flavors that are nearly identical to those of chicken or lobster. Not all mushrooms are harmful. Some are enjoyable. Some species have such remarkable flavors that they nearly precisely resemble meat or seafood. For instance, the lobster mushroom has a vivid reddish-orange hue and a flavor reminiscent of shellfish sweetness. With its layered fan-like form, chicken of the woods breaks apart into portions that taste and feel like chicken breast. Long before plant-based diets gained popularity, foragers valued these mushrooms for ages as natural meat substitutes. The peculiar adaptability of fungus is experienced by biting into one. How something that grows discreetly from a tree's bark may taste like a farm or sea feast. Mushrooms seem to be flavor-form changers, incorporating flavors from animals while staying firmly in their own enigmatic realm. Mushrooms were employed in religious ceremonies by ancient cultures. Mushrooms have been used in temples and ceremonies for thousands of years, in addition to kitchens. Ancient peoples perceived a supernatural quality in the way mushrooms appeared out of thin air, seemingly created out of nothing. The famous fairy tale mushroom, the red and white Amanita muscaria, was utilized by shamans in Siberia to induce trance states. Tion nana livestock, which means the flesh of the gods, were sacred mushrooms used in ceremonies by the Aztecs in Mesoamerica to establish a connection with the divine. Even individuals carrying mushrooms may be seen in Spanish cave paintings that are believed to be around 6,000 years old. There was more to these fungi than food. They served as portals to spiritual quests, visions, and altered experiences. As mushrooms magically emerged from the ground to remind people of the thin line separating the ordinary from the extraordinary, they appeared to our ancestors as signals from another world. Insects' thoughts are taken over by certain mushrooms. Fungi called cordyceps are responsible for one of nature's spookiest and most interesting phenomena. In soil, these mushrooms don't only grow silently. They take over the behavior of insects by infecting them. The fungus quickly spreads throughout the ant's body after a spore drops on it. The ant is eventually coerced into climbing a tree or stem to the ideal height for spore distribution by manipulating its thinking. The ant is frozen there, clinging without moving. The fungus then explodes through its body, developing an odd stalk that spreads infection to others below. Because of this gory cycle, cordyceps has been dubbed zombie fungus. It's disturbing, but it also serves as a reminder of how fungi have developed clever, albeit unsettling, survival techniques. Even insects might become unwilling puppets in the silent theater of the mushrooms hidden on the forest floor. An entire amphibian population was once wiped out by a fungus. Biologists started to notice that toads, salamanders, and frogs were going extinct all across the world in the late 20th century. A fungus known as Batrachochytrium dendrobatidis, or BD for short, was found to be the perpetrator. This fungus damages amphibians' skin, impairing their capacity to breathe and control water. The fungus has been dubbed one of the most deadly infections in recorded history, and because amphibians receive a large portion of their oxygen and moisture through their skin, the infection is sometimes fatal. Whole populations of amphibians have been known to disappear overnight. The hidden power of fungi is demonstrated by the idea that something so tiny and imperceptible to the naked eye might alter entire ecosystems. Conservationists are still working to create antifungal therapies and breeding programs in an effort to save endangered species. BD's tail serves as a somber reminder. In addition to being recyclers and helpers, fungi may also be destroyers, altering the path of life on Earth. There are spores of mushrooms in the air you breathe. Tiny fragments of the fungus kingdom are present in every breath you take. The minuscule fungus seeds known as mushroom spores are so common that billions of them are constantly circling us in the air without being noticed. They float for miles on the wind or fall with rains as they move across cities, woods, and oceans. According to scientists, there may be thousands of spores in every cubic meter of outdoor air. You breathe them in without even realizing it. Your body, however, has adjusted to this underlying rule of life. Spores are actually among the most prevalent biological particles in the atmosphere of Earth. They can even ride currents up into clouds because they are so light and tiny. Every breath, in a manner, links your lungs to ecosystems you might never see, to distant woods and mushrooms. The silent presence of mushrooms is something you are constantly breathing in. Spores can float in the stratosphere because they are so light. Spores are made to migrate, in contrast to seeds, which are frequently heavy and attached to the ground. Because they are so little and light, many of them can stay in the air for incredibly long periods of time. Some have been found floating in the stratosphere more than 20 meters above the surface of the Earth. They might drift over continents and oceans there, hitching rides on winds at high altitudes. Spores can withstand such travels because they have protective coverings that insulate them from radiation, dryness, and ultraviolet light. Fungi are among the most successful colonizers in nature because of their capacity to travel great distances. Picture a single puffball mushroom spore being released in a meadow, floating into the sky, and then, months later, settling into soil on the opposite side of the world. The atmosphere itself becomes an unseen but constant life highway thanks to spores, which link ecosystems all over the world. Certain spores can withstand space travel. Many spores were able to withstand conditions that would have instantaneously killed most organisms in studies when they were exposed to the vacuum and radiation of space. Spools lived for hours, even weeks, encased in their hard protective coverings, floating outside of spaceships or affixed to satellites. The concept of panspermia, which holds that life could travel between planets by spores or bacteria transported on meteorites or dust, was sparked by this endurance. The ability of fungus spores to endure such travels raises the possibility that life is more mobile than previously believed, even spanning the solar system or even the galaxy. When a mushroom releases a cloud of spores, you are seeing a survival tactic that may be so effective that it transcends Earth. They are minuscule adventurers, resilient enough to withstand the emptiness, yearning to settle in a new world. Over time, stone can be broken down by mushrooms. Even rocks are susceptible to the sluggish persistence of fungi, despite our common belief that they are indestructible. Certain lichen species, which are a fungus-algae relationship, release acids that have the ability to decompose minerals and wear stone into soil over time. This process turns boulders, cliffs, and mountains into plant-growing soil over many centuries. The world might stay trapped in bare rock without fungi and lichens, unable to sustain grasslands and lush woods. As the first gardeners on Earth, the fungi laid the groundwork for all subsequent green life. Even now, tiny fungus patches may be found gradually carving designs into the stone of old tombstones or ancient ruins. Fungi subtly reshape the strong bones of the planet, demonstrating that nothing is beyond their perseverance. with patience measured in centuries rather than days. In meadows, some fungi make fairy rings. When you walk into a grassy field after rain, you might see a perfectly circular circle of mushrooms that have been left behind by dancing fairies. These are known as fairy rings, and they develop when a single fungus spreads underground in all directions. The mycelium's advancing edge is only partially represented by the mushrooms you see. The circle gets wider over time, sometimes getting bigger every year. According to mythology, fairy rings were either enchanted locations, portals to a different world, or remnants of nightly dances performed by invisible entities. Even though scientists now understand that the rings are just fungi growing naturally, there is still awe. Seeing a fairy ring is like seeing geometry come to life in the grass, a living circle made of invisible strands that binds the common meadow to something eternal, mystical, and hidden. After rain, certain mushrooms may grow overnight. The unexpected appearance of mushrooms has an amazing quality. The ground appears bare one day, and then appears to be peppered with new life the following morning. In a few hours, mushrooms can sometimes push up through soil or leaf litter due to their rapid growth. The secret mycelium, which stores energy until the correct circumstances arise, powers their growth. Rainfall supplies the necessary moisture and softens the earth. Then, like a time-lapse wonder, the mushroom bursts upward. Because of their unexpected arrival, mushrooms have a mysterious reputation in mythology, as though they are summoned by magic or spirits. Actually, it is the most effective form of biology. Years of unseen preparation culminated in a single, breathtaking appearance. Remember that mushrooms were previously present and patiently awaited the cue to emerge into the light the next time you see them following a storm. Cloth has been naturally dyed with mushrooms. People found that mushrooms could color textiles with unexpected radiance long before synthetic dyes were invented. Gold, green, purple, red, and even deep blue hues can be produced by several species. In order to produce rich yellow and orange tones, some dyers continue to forage for mushrooms such as phyllete, often known as the dyer's polyp. For delicate pinks and purples, some use lichens. When cooked with wool or silk, the distinct chemicals found in each species of mushroom release pigments that adhere to the fibers. These dyes are reusable, natural, and frequently produce subtle color shifts in response to light. In the past, wearing clothing dyed with mushrooms meant bringing a fragment of the forest with you, as its colors were woven into the fabric. Artists continue to carry on this tradition today, honoring fungus not only as food or medicine, but also as color artists who use palettes buried in the ground to paint the world. Some fungi have the ability to catch and consume nematodes. Although some are hunters, fungi are generally thought of as silent decomposers that break down wood and leaf litter. Some fungi that live in soil have developed strategies for capturing and eating nematodes, worms that slither across the earth like tiny threads. These weird constructs can be tiny snares, sticky nets that capture worms in flight, or even sophisticated lasso-shaped rings that, when touched, tighten like nooses. Once captured, the nematode is pierced by the fungus, which then drains its nutrition to support its growth. Our perception of mushrooms is altered when we consider them to be predators that set unseen traps in the ground. They are shrewd survivors who can hunt without eyes or movement, not passive creatures. There might be whole fungus and worm battlefields beneath your feet. They are invisible but persistent, and every wind contributes to the gradual growth of the fungal kingdom. In terms of structure, mushrooms may be more robust than steel. Despite their fragile appearance, mushrooms can have incredibly robust structures. Mycelium's delicate threads intertwine to form a dense network that is comparable to some of the strongest materials on the planet. According to testing, some mycelium composites can really be stronger than steel in terms of weight. Because of their strength, low weight, and biodegradability, fungi have been a focus of material research. These days, designers are experimenting with long-lasting, fire-resistant, and completely compostable furniture that can be disposed of when it's no longer needed, as well as bricks, insulation, and mushroom-based building materials. It's amazing how something as simple as a toadstool in the forest can serve as the inspiration for buildings strong enough to hold houses. Resilience is not always obvious or loud, as mushrooms serve as a reminder. It can occasionally be subtly knitted, fiber by fiber, creating networks that appear modest but are quite strong. One of the earliest living things on land was fungi. Fungi had arrived on the coasts of ancient Earth long before trees reached the sky or flowers opened their petals. Fungi helped turn rock into soil when they first settled on Earth more than 1 billion years ago, according to fossil evidence. By doing this, they set the stage for the emergence of plants. According to some scientists, there were once massive fungal towers that were more than 20 feet tall and scattered across the landscape hundreds of millions of years ago. It's possible that these odd creatures, known as proto-taxites, were the tallest creatures alive at the time. Imagine a desolate alien world where, long before there were forests or meadows, enormous fungal spires soared above the ground. The fertile, verdant and plant-rich Earth that we know today might not have existed if it weren't for fungi that cleared the path. They were the silent forerunners of terrestrial life, patiently and persistently forming the planet. Some mushrooms are tiny enough to fit on the head of a pin. Most of us associate mushrooms with enormous caps that can be picked, cooked, or photographed in a forest. However, some mushrooms in the secret microworld are so little that they can be balanced on a pin's head with ease. These tiny fungi, which are frequently only visible under a magnifying glass, grow like dust particles on fallen twigs or decomposing leaves. They nevertheless break down materials and release spores, which is a crucial function of larger mushrooms, despite their little size. With caps as small as sugar grains, several of these microfungi form exquisite, nearly crystalline formations. It is sobering to think that such delicate, transient life forms are present everywhere, hidden from view. In addition to massive mushrooms and tall trees, the forest is home to minuscule realms of life that flourish in areas too small for our naked eyes to perceive. Others have the capacity to outgrow humans. On the other end of the spectrum, some mushrooms reach incredible proportions. For instance, some examples of the enormous puffball mushroom can weigh over 20 pounds and can grow to the size of a beach ball. A single puffball can release trillions of spores when it reaches maturity, forming a smoky cloud that floats on the wind. The enormous bracket fungi that grow wide enough to act as a natural seat cling to tree trunks in tropical forests like shelves. These enormous mushrooms evoked awe in legend because they appeared to be more mythical beings than plants. Standing in front of one of these massive fungi serves as a reminder that mushrooms are not always little or transient. They can be enormous, expansive, and long-lasting. They are as big as the animals that live among them. A kingdom of extremes. Fungi range in size from the almost imperceptible to the incredibly large. Truffles have a scent that can make animals go crazy. The coveted underground mushrooms known as truffles have a strong scent that enthralls both people and animals. Compounds in their aroma are comparable to pheromones, which are chemical cues used by many animals to communicate. The scent of truffles might be particularly alluring to pigs. In fact, farmers used to rely on pigs to detect them. Because they can identify the fragrance without eating the discovery, dogs are now preferred. People are enchanted too. One of the priciest foods in the world is truffles, prized for their earthy, musky, and euphoric scent. As the smell permeates the soil, animals are drawn to the spores and unintentionally aid in their spread. Truffles have been able to thrive underground, where they are unable to discharge spores into the atmosphere, thanks to this odd tactic. Rather, they use a lure, a scent so alluring that whole species are motivated to pursue them. Trees communicate with one another through mushrooms. Trees are not silent in the middle of the forest. Fun makes it feasible for them to exchange alarm messages, water, and sweets. By forming alliances with tree roots, mycorrhizal fungi spread their mycelial networks far into the ground. Trees can share resources through these relationships. For instance, the fungal threads may transfer additional carbohydrates from the sunlit neighbors to a shaded tree. Chemical messages can travel underground to warn neighboring trees to erect defenses if pests or disease pose a hazard. The World Wide Web is another name for this covert dialogue. Forests would be much less cooperative, and many young trees would not survive without fungus. The next time you stroll through a forest, visualize the roots beneath you as components of a vast, interconnected mind, a peaceful network where mushrooms serve as intermediaries between giants rather than as distinct systems. Whole woods are connected via the Wood Wide Web. Both scientists and storytellers are fascinated by the concept of the Wood Wide Web. Entire forests, not simply individual trees, are connected by fungi. Dozens or even hundreds of trees may be connected by a single mycelial network, forming an interdependent community. This web allows older mother trees to nourish their seedlings, fostering the next generation. In certain ways, dying trees might leave a legacy for the network by passing on their remaining resources. A forest can function more like a single, living, breathing creature thanks to this subterranean network than as a collection of separate individuals. Only half the tale is revealed by the trunks, branches, and leaves that are visible above ground. The forest's secret unity is maintained by the fungus kingdom, which is woven into a web as intricate as the neural networks in our own brains beneath the dark earth. Carbon can be stored for centuries underground by mushrooms. The storage of carbon is one of the most subtle yet significant functions of fungus. Fungi interact with plants to transfer carbon from the atmosphere into the soil, where it is stored in subterranean mycelium networks. A portion of this carbon can be securely stored outside of the atmosphere for generations. Fungi help to stabilize Earth's climate in this way, preventing the world from warming too quickly due to excess carbon dioxide. The fungal webs that maintain the flow of nutrients and the storage of carbon are largely responsible for forests' function as carbon sinks. Fungi control the rate at which carbon is released back into the atmosphere, even during the decomposition of materials. The humble mushroom may turn out to be one of Earth's most effective protectors in an era when climate change is the main concern of humanity. It quietly works beneath the soil to maintain equilibrium in the world's cycle. Certain mushrooms can only thrive on animal excrement. Odd as it may seem, some mushrooms grow in locations that most people would not, such as animal feces. Certain species, such as the Copinopsis, often known as inky caps, grow straight from manure. Although it may not look enticing, this is a clever tactic. The animal's digestive system has already broken down the nutrients in dung, and fungi are well suited to recycle what's left over. They accomplish the cycle of life by converting trash back into productive soil. Some of these mushrooms even fire their spores with such force that they break out of the dung pile's shadow and land on new grass, where they can be eaten by grazing animals, starting a new cycle. To fungus, what appears uncomfortable to us is a chance. Nothing is wasted in their universe, not even the most improbable life-giving ingredients. Others only show up following a forest fire. Certain mushrooms patiently await devastation before emerging. These are referred to as fire-loving fungi, or pyrophiles. Until fires burn through a forest, removing plants and leaving behind ash, they stay concealed in the ground. Then, mushrooms like the morel start to appear in large quantities, almost miraculously. Fire changes the soil's chemistry, which creates the ideal environment for these fungi to grow. Because of their rich, earthy flavor and honeycomb-like tops, morels can be found in abundance in the forested woodlands that have been burned. Beyond their appeal to humans, however, these fire-falling fungi are essential to the ecosystem. They aid in forests' recovery from destruction by swiftly recycling nutrients and preparing the basis for new growth. Mushrooms emerge where flames have eaten, turning loss into the start of rebirth. They quietly act as the forest's first responders, transforming devastation into a place where life can flourish. Natural antibiotics can be found in certain mushrooms. Fungi were already chemists long before modern medicine, creating substances to protect themselves from bacteria and other microorganisms. It turns out that several of these chemicals were also beneficial to humans. The first commonly used antibiotic, penicillin, was notably found in mold, a close fungal relative of mushrooms. However, mushrooms also contain antibacterial compounds, a few of which are being researched as possible infection therapies. These substances aid mushrooms in surviving in highly competitive situations in the wild. They serve as a reminder to us that oftentimes the answers to our problems are hidden in nature, just waiting to be discovered. Think of the next time you see a mushroom growing from a fallen log as a tiny laboratory that produces chemicals for both its own survival and possibly the treatment of creatures who live far from its woodland home. Beer and bread wouldn't exist without fungi. Fungi enables the commonplace miracles of beer foaming in a glass or bread rising in the oven. A single-celled relative of mushrooms, yeast converts carbohydrates into carbon dioxide and alcohol. This procedure creates the bubbles in beer and champagne in addition to giving bread its fluffy texture. Human diet would be completely different without fungus. No wine, no frothy ales, no warm bread loaves. Evidence of fermentation dating back thousands of years has been discovered by archaeologists, demonstrating that fungi and humans have coexisted since the beginning of civilization. Fungi have influenced customs, economies, and festivals, shaping culture in a similar way to how they have created forests. You are tasting the invisible labor of fungi that have been used for happiness and sustenance since the beginning of time when you cut open a loaf of bread or take a sip of a beverage. Baking yeast is a type of fungus. It's simple to forget that the yeast that's stirred into a brewer's vat or sprinkled into bread is living. These tiny fungi grow rapidly and produce gases that cause dough to puff up or fizz when they feed on sugar. Despite their small size, yeast have been with humans for a very long time. They were probably first found accidentally when wild yeast that was floating in the air landed on wet grains or crushed fruit and caused fermentation. People eventually discovered how to grow and manage yeast, making them the hidden laborers who power breweries and restaurants. Despite their careful breeding, modern yeast strains are nevertheless classified as members of the fungal kingdom, which includes the mushrooms that grow in woods as cousins. There is a silent fungal tale in every bottle of wine and every loaf of bread. Billions of cells collaborating, invisible yet vital, transforming sweetness into substance and serving as a reminder of the unspoken relationships in life. Red liquid can leak from certain mushrooms. There are some forests where you may find a mushroom that appears to have been injured. Its cap is beaded with droplets of blood-red liquid. Hidden peekaboo is among the most well-known. The bleeding tooth fungus is another name for it. Although it appears frightening, the crimson fluid is actually a sup-like exudate that is rich in pigments and chemicals rather than blood. The goal is still up for dispute. It might aid the fungus in controlling moisture or warding off pathogens. It is unnerving to come upon such a mushroom, as if nature were strangely and eerily mimicking the familiar. These bleeding fungi serve as a reminder that the forest contains secrets that are meant for the survival of the creatures themselves, not for human eyes. In a world where even mushrooms can shed scarlet diamonds in the moss, we are but unintentional observers. Others have the distinct stench of rotting flesh. Some mushrooms thrive by having an unpleasant odor rather than by being aesthetically pleasing. These fungi, called stinkhorns, have a stench that is almost exactly like that of rotting meat. The odor draws beetles and flies, who descend on the mushroom and inadvertently remove its spores. It is a clever tactic that converts aversion into dispersal. The stink can be overpowering to people. However, these mushrooms are skilled manipulators who trick insects into complying with their commands. Some tribes believe that stinkhorns are omens or spirits. Their odious smell and unexpected appearance were associated with superstition. In actuality, though, they are just astute survivors that have evolved to employ scent as a lure. The abrupt smell of decay in a forest's silence might not even be an indication of death, but rather the peculiar life of a fungus deceiving every passing creature's senses. Entire underground cities can be made by fungi. Mycelium does not simply generate haphazard threads as it grows beneath the soil. It creates intricate, multi-layered networks that resemble thriving underground metropolises. Highways split off and rejoin, forming pathways for the movement of nutrients. Certain places function as markets where plants and resources are traded. Others act as vaults for storing supplies for hard times. Using cutting-edge imaging, scientists have discovered that these networks are remarkably efficient, optimizing paths in a manner similar to that of infrastructure created by humans. Fungi can be thought of as engineers creating secret structures that are on par with the architectural design of our own cities. The fungus kingdom is subtly creating complex worlds underneath where billions of organisms collaborate and flourish as we construct buildings and pave highways above ground. There is a civilization of threads in the dirt beneath our feet. Therefore, it is not empty. A wall-less city that glowed softly with life's pulse. Touching certain mushrooms might cause them to change color. Outward looks can be deceiving in the world of fungi. Certain mushrooms change color when they are handled, chopped, or bruised. The blue-staining bolite, whose skin turns a vibrant cobalt blue when exposed to air, is a stunning example. Compounds in the mushroom react chemically with oxygen to produce this color shift. The change can serve as a useful identifying clue for foragers. The effect is captivating but not usually a sign of edibility. An ordinary-looking mushroom suddenly becomes brilliant, as if displaying a secret aspect of itself. According to mythology, mushrooms that changed color were magical or charmed, possessing hidden abilities. Today, touching one evokes the same sense of astonishment that the forest exposes a trick, a brief sight of chemistry masquerading as sorcery, simply via contact. Some mushrooms have a maple syrup-like scent. Not all smells of mushrooms are bad. Some scents are so exquisite that they seem to be created with human pleasure in mind. For instance, the aroma of the candy cap mushroom is nearly the same as that of maple syrup. The perfume becomes stronger when it dries, filling spaces with the sugar and pancake sweetness. Chefs turn a woodland find into culinary magic by using these mushrooms to flavor pastries, ice creams, and desserts. Lactones are chemicals that give the mushroom its scent by deceiving our senses into thinking it is delicious. Discovering one in the wild is similar to discovering a hidden kitchen beneath the trees. It serves as a reminder that fungi are chemists who create fragrances that might startle, repel, or appeal. Mushrooms produce an intangible symphony of scents, ranging from the odor of decay to the aroma of maple syrup. We are just starting to comprehend the meaning of each note recorded in molecules. Certain mushrooms have an almond or coconut scent. Mushrooms can have a surprisingly wide variety of recognizable culinary odors, just like flowers. Aromas of coconut, almonds, or even marzipan are carried by several species. For example, the perfume of the almond-scented agaricus is so similar to that of the nut that some foragers use it as a primary means of identification. Rustulas that smell of coconut, on the other hand, appear to evoke tropical sweetness, even though they are native to temperate forest bottoms. These smells are produced by volatile substances that release fragrances into the atmosphere, either drawing in animals or merely discouraging others. They become delightful curiosities for humans. Evidence shows the processes in which fungi manipulate chemicals are similar to those found in our kitchens and memories. Leaning near a mushroom and inhaling the scent of fruit or dessert is a fleeting experience, but the forest itself is dreaming of flavors, incorporating comforting familiarities into its odd and hidden growths. There is a lot of vitamin D in mushrooms. Vitamin D is not found naturally in many foods. But there's a secret about mushrooms. They are able to create their own. When exposed to sunshine, they create vitamin D, just like humans do. This vital nutrient is created when components within a mushroom's skin are exposed to ultraviolet light. Vitamin D benefits people by balancing mood, bolstering the immune system, and strengthening bones. As much vitamin D as a pill can be found in a handful of sun-dried mushrooms. To increase the nutritional value of freshly picked mushrooms, some cultures even expose them to the sun before eating. The fact that humans and mushrooms both have this ability and depend on the same light chemistry is astounding. Mushrooms may appear to be far from the sun in the gloomy forest. However, when exposed to its rays, they absorb its energy and transform into food, as well as a link between soil, light, and life. Some mushrooms have glow-producing natural poisons. Poison and beauty coexist in certain fungi. Certain animals have poisons that not only shield them, but also enable them to glow. Luciferin and luciferase undergo chemical interactions to produce the mild green or blue light that these bioluminescent mushrooms emit. According to scientists, the luminescence could have several uses: communicating to other species, attracting insects, or discouraging predators. At night, when sections of woodland canopy appear to shimmer with a subtle unearthly glow, the uncanny shine is most noticeable. It's both magical and unnerving to find such a sight. Luminous mushrooms that appear to be lit from within, but are deadly to touch. Glowy fungi were interpreted as omens or spirits in folklore. Their spectral illumination suggests the existence of the paranormal. The chemistry is revealed by science, yet the wonder endures. Strategies to transform protection into brilliance that are life-changing. There is no remedy for deathcap mushrooms. The deathcap, Amanita phalloides, is one of the most dreaded mushrooms on the planet. It appears very commonplace. A mushroom with a pale green top and a white stalk that could be mistaken for food. However, a poison known as amatoxin is concealed therein, among the most deadly compounds in existence. An adult human can be killed with just half a cap. Even worse, sufferers may be lulled into complete security before liver and kidney damage starts, since symptoms cannot show up for hours. There is no remedy. Although survival is uncertain, hospitals can offer supportive treatment and occasionally even liver transplants. Throughout history, this mushroom alone has caused innumerable unintentional fatalities. We are reminded of nature's apathy by the fact that such danger may appear in such a delicate form. In the forest, beauty and fear coexist, and mushrooms, which are frequently used as recyclers and healers, can occasionally contain a deadly secret encoded in chemistry. A cholera outbreak was once prevented by a mushroom. Cholera was a horrifying illness that swept across Europe, Asia, and beyond in the 19th century. People were in dire need of remedies, and the fungus kingdom provided one unexpected hero. The cholera bacterium was found to be stopped in its tracks by a fungus called Penicillium gorum, which is linked to the one that gave us penicillin. Although the discovery was not entirely understood at the time, it provided preliminary proof of the therapeutic potential of fungus. What this mushroom had always suggested was later validated by the more general discovery of antibiotics. Fungi carries substances that have the power to alter human history. Imagine whole cities shuddering in fear of sickness, only to find solace in the modest growth of a mold. The impending antibiotic revolution was subtly hinted at that time. Evidence of the ability of mushrooms and their relatives to protect humanity from its most terrible enemies. Fungi is able to recall previous circumstances. It may seem odd, yet it has been demonstrated that mushrooms can recall past events. Researchers found that when fungal networks are exposed to certain environmental changes, such as variations in temperature, moisture content, or nutrient availability, they may react differently. The situation was restored. It seems that the mycelium had learned from its mistakes and was able to adapt more rapidly the second time. This memory is a type of biological recall imprinted in the fungal threads, although it differs from the human mind. Fungi are among the most resilient life forms on Earth, which may be explained by their versatility. They recall, adjust, and react to patterns. To stroll through a forest is to traverse an environment that is alive with memories as much as growth. Networks of fungi that secretly adapt for everyone's survival by remembering fires, droughts, and storms. The land itself seems to remember, conveyed through the unseen strands beneath our feet. Certain mushrooms can withstand cold temperatures. You might imagine mushrooms would disappear in the dead of winter when the ground is frozen solid. However, certain animals exhibit remarkable resilience to cold. When conditions improve, some can resurrect after freezing solid and turning their water into ice crystals. Others, seemingly unaffected by the season, are still bearing fruit under the snow, pushing little caps through the frost. They are resilient because their cells are shielded from harm by substances that resemble antifreeze. This tenacity is remarkable for organisms that appear so delicate. It implies that mushrooms can grow in hostile habitats like mountain peaks and tundra. To find a mushroom growing out of the snow is to witness the epitome of defiance. Silently, life persists under circumstances that would kill most plants. They serve as a reminder that hidden kingdoms persist in their slow and persistent struggle for life, even in the most desolate and frigid locations. For thousands of years, traditional medicine has made use of mushrooms. Mushrooms have been valued as healers for generations and throughout cultures. Reishi mushrooms, also known as the mushroom of immortality, are thought to promote lifespan and energy in traditional Chinese medicine. Shiitake mushrooms were originally used as a health tonic by the elite in Japan. In order to treat wounds, fevers, and exhaustion, indigenous peoples in Siberia, North America, and Africa created their own mushroom medicines, ranging from teas to poultices. Now that modern science has caught up, it has discovered chemicals in mushrooms that have anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting, and even anti-cancer effects. With the use of tests and microscopes, laboratories today validate what the ancient healers felt from experience. You are a member of a lineage that dates back thousands of years when you drink mushroom tea or learn about medicinal extracts. Evidence of the close relationship that exists between fungi and humans. A connection based on respect and necessity. In animals, lion's mane mushroom can regenerate nerve cells. The lion's mane mushroom is a robust and gorgeous fungus with icicle-like spines that cascade. Compounds in lion's mane have been demonstrated in animal studies to promote nerve cell proliferation. These substances, known as aromas and hierocinorms, promote the synthesis of nerve growth factor, a substance essential for neuron maintenance and repair. Lion's mane has garnered a lot of attention as a possible treatment for neurodegenerative illnesses, including Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, because of this discovery. It has been utilized as a brain tonic in traditional Asian medicine for generations, and contemporary science is now figuring out why. Imagine a mushroom with the capacity to cure the most complex neural networks in the human mind, soft and white like a frozen waterfall. It serves as a reminder that the answers to our most pressing medical problems might still be concealed in the forest's more sedate nooks. Some mushrooms emit smoke as they release their spores. The enchantment of puffball mushrooms is unique. As they reach maturity, millions of spores fill their spherical bodies, waiting for the ideal time to spread. A smoky explosion can be sent into the air in response to a raindrop, a paw, or even an inquisitive human touch. A shimmering cloud of spores is what appears to be smoke. Each one is a little capsule of potential that is floating in the wind. Puffballs are frequently a source of joy for kids and foragers, acting as a tiny version of a live fireworks show. Beyond the awe, though, this tactic works incredibly well. Trillions of spores might be moved away in a single passage, guaranteeing the species' survival. To watch one erupt in a cloud is to observe the tenacity of life in action, cloaked in a transient smoke trick on the forest floor. In a forest, fungi aid in the decomposition of every falling leaf. Fungi start their meticulous work when the leaves cover the ground in the fall. The woodland would suffocate under mounds of rubble without them. The stiff substances that give wood and leaves their structure, lignin and cellulose, are broken down by the potent enzymes secreted by fungi. In reality, what appears to be slow degradation is a sophisticated recycling system. In order to support new growth in the spring, the nutrients that were trapped in those leaves are released back into the soil. This process is partially responsible for the life of every flower that blossoms and every blade of grass that emerges. The invisible guardians of the forest are fungi, who make sure that nothing is wasted and that death is transformed into life. When you go through autumnal woods, you are traversing an invisible economy driven by mushrooms, where each fallen leaf contributes to a cycle that is older than time itself. Life on Earth would drown in trash if fungus didn't exist. Each year, animals die, trees crash, branches break, and billions of leaves fall. In the absence of fungi, all of this organic matter would continue to accumulate, layer by layer, until the world was covered in its own waste. By secreting enzymes that break down the hardest compounds found in wood, leaves, and bone, fungi are the ultimate recyclers. To feed the next generation of life, they transform what appears solid and final into dirt, nutrients, and air. The cycles of regeneration would come to a halt, and woods would choke under their own weight if fungi disappeared, only because innumerable fungal threads have labored endlessly to clear the path, transforming yesterday's remnants into tomorrow's development. Is every step you take on a forest floor feasible? Fungi keeps the earth habitable, breathable, and constantly regenerating via patience and silence. The invisible guardians keeping the planet from sinking into its history. Certain mushrooms are not visible until dusk. Some mushrooms disappear into their environment during the day, mixing with the soil, bark, and leaves. However, they divulge their secret when night falls. Bioluminescent fungi appear out of the shadows like phantom lamps, glowing softly in shades of green, blue, or yellow. You feel as though you have entered a different world where mushrooms illuminate their own path when you come across one in a nighttime forest. Like the process that makes fireflies sparkle, the illumination is caused by a delicate chemical dance that takes place inside their cells. Some animals appear to be performing exclusively for the darkness, saving energy throughout the day by only glowing at night. These illuminating mushrooms have been used for generations to guide or deceive travelers beneath the moon, inspiring stories of forest ghosts. They continue to arouse curiosity today, demonstrating that the woodland has its own lanterns that are only turned on when the stars are out. To produce lichens, fungi can cultivate algae. The vibrant frills and crusts that cling to rocks and trees are called lichens, and they are partnerships rather than single organisms. They are fungi that have figured out how to cultivate cyanobacteria or algae. The funders supply moisture, structure, and protection. Through photosynthesis, the algae provide food, but when combined, they produce completely new life forms that can endure in harsh environments where neither could. Deserts, stark cliffs, Arctic tundras, and even space. Some of the earliest and most resilient people to settle on Earth are lichens, who turn rock into soil and cover the planet in regions of orange, yellow, and green. In one of the first instances of collaboration in nature, the fungi are essentially farmers growing their companions rather than only scavengers. Every lichen is a silent tale of cooperation, demonstrating that cooperation across kingdoms of life is frequently more important for survival than rivalry. Some mushrooms must be cooked in order to be consumed. Even if they are not toxic, not all mushrooms are suitable for raw consumption. Some include indigestible substances or minor poisons that can only be eliminated through cooking. One such example is morels, which chefs highly recommend. They can upset your stomach if you eat them raw, but after you roast or sauté them, they become delicious and have earthy, nutty aromas. Only when their chemistry is unlocked by heat do some, such as shiitake, produce greater aromas and nutrients. Their tale seems to be completed by fire, which transforms possible damage into sustenance. This information has been passed down through the centuries for foragers. When prepared properly, danger can be transformed into joy. It's practically an alchemical change. The act of cooking transforms something unreliable into something nutritious. We are reminded by mushrooms that eating is not always simple. To uncover what's inside, sometimes ceremony, patience, and respect are needed. Some mushrooms are inedible due to their extreme bitterness. Not all mushrooms want to be consumed. Some protect themselves with harsh flavors, so even the most ravenous animal will spit them out. For example, the bitter bolete has a taste so sharp that it may ruin a meal with a single bite, while having a nearly identical appearance to edible relatives. Nature uses these protective substances to deter predators without using poisons. Bitterness frequently serves as a warning to us, a sensory alert telling us to stop. It is an additional survival tool in the kingdom of fungi. Even so, these inedible mushrooms support ecosystems by recycling waste and improving soil quality. They serve as a reminder that not everything of the forest is intended for humans. Who eats and who is left alone is decided by a silent tug-of-war between species, which includes that taste itself. Natural hallucinogens can be produced by fungi. The most well-known and contentious mushrooms are those that contain psilocybin and other hallucinogenic substances. These substances have the power to significantly change how people perceive the world, producing hallucinations, warped time, and a sense of interconnectedness. These mushrooms have been utilized in shamanic and spiritual ceremonies for ages because they are thought to provide access to the divine. Scientists have recently started to re-examine these fungi with renewed interest in order to investigate their potential as treatments for addiction, anxiety, and depression. It's incredible how profoundly a mushroom can alter consciousness. It implies that mushrooms have the ability to rewire the human mind in addition to recycling the forest. These mushrooms are at the nexus of biology and mystery, and whether they are seen as sacred, harmful, or medicinal, they have the ability to change reality itself within their delicate caps. The use of mushrooms may be depicted in prehistoric cave paintings. Human beings grasping mushroom-like items can be seen in prehistoric paintings found in caves all throughout Spain and Algeria. These are interpreted by some researchers as proof that early people collected mushrooms for spiritual experiences in addition to nourishment. The pictures featured patterns, dancing figures, and color explosions that mirrored the kinds of sights that psychedelic mushrooms may produce. The idea that tens of thousands of years ago people were investigating fungal states of mind is intriguing, even though we cannot be positive. It implies that since the beginning of art itself, mushrooms have influenced society, ritual, and imagination. One might feel a strong connection to the ways fungi have always inspired survival and storytelling by imagining ancient humans hunched around firelight, drawing mushrooms on cave walls as emblems of trips into the unseen. Packaging that is biodegradable can be made from mushrooms. Fungi could be a solution in a world where plastic waste is a problem. Molds made from mycelium can be used to create strong, lightweight packaging. The substance looks like polystyrene foam after drying. However, it is entirely biodegradable. In order to replace styrofoam in electronics, shipping boxes, and even furniture cushions, companies are already experimenting with mushroom packaging. It can be composted after usage, which will return it to the soil in a harmless way. Since the mycelium is fed agricultural waste, the method employs plentiful and renewable raw materials. It's incredible to consider that the same organism that grows mushrooms in the forest might eventually cushion your packages or safeguard breakable items without causing any pollution. Fungi promises a cycle of production and return, giving optimism that packaging itself may eventually blend in with the organic flow of life in an environment where plastic has persisted for generations. Certain types of mycelium have natural fire-retardant properties. When cultivated into materials, researchers have found that some forms of mycelium naturally withstand flames. Mycelium compounds char and smolder without releasing harmful gases, in contrast to wood or plastics that burn and emit poisonous smoke. They therefore hold promise as environmentally acceptable building materials, furnishings, and insulation. Imagine secure, sturdy walls covered with fungal networks that shield houses from fire as well as the elements. The fungal cell wall's polysaccharides and chitin, which are resistant to burning, hold the key. Fungi have allowed nature to create a material that humans are only now starting to recognize. Construction could be revolutionized by mycelium fireproofing, which would make structures safer and more environmentally friendly. It serves as a reminder of the adaptability of fungus to discover that the same unseen threads that bind a forest floor together may also protect a home from fire. A peaceful kingdom providing future-oriented tools. I could use mushrooms in place of leather. Although leather has long been prized for its durability and adaptability, its production is expensive and resource-intensive. Presenting mica leather, a substance derived from fungus mycelium. To replicate the texture and appearance of conventional leather, it can be grown in sheets and then tanned and polished. The end product is completely biodegradable, breathable, and long-lasting. Designers are already using this novel material to create furniture, purses, and shoes. Mycica leather may be produced in a matter of weeks using far less water and without involving any cruelty, in contrast to animal hides that require months or years to produce. Its texture can be made smooth and shiny or soft and suede-like. It's nearly unbelievable to consider that the same network that grows mushrooms can also construct a chair or clothing. In addition to being healers and recyclers, fungi are also inventors that provide humanity with materials that combine sustainability, ethics, and beauty. Compounds in some mushrooms have the ability to melt ice. Some mushrooms have secrets that allow them to survive in forests with harsh, long winters. Even when the air freezes, certain species' cells remain safe because they create sugars and proteins that resemble antifreeze. By lowering water's freezing point, these substances stop jagged ice crystals from forming and rupturing delicate tissues. This enables fungus to continue decomposing wood and leaves in the soil while the majority of organisms are inactive. Even more astounding is the fact that these molecules occasionally leak into the surrounding environment, allowing the ice to lessen its hold on the mushroom. These natural antifreezes are being researched by researchers as models for less harmful alternatives to harsh chemicals for de-icing roadways or protecting crops from frost. The idea of a little mushroom, no larger than your palm, subtly changing its frozen environment is humbling and serves as a reminder that even the smallest, most delicate places in life may be resilient. Minerals can be extracted from rocks by fungi. Fungi are extraordinary miners, despite having neither muscles nor tools. In order to release nutrients like calcium, magnesium, and potassium, certain species emit organic acids that gradually dissolve rock. By doing this, they turn inert stone into rich soil, laying the groundwork for crops and forests. It's possible that this process started over 1 billion years ago, when fungi first appeared on barren landscapes, opening the door for plants to settle on land. Even still, lichens, algal and fungal collaborations carve their way across gravestones and rocks, little but unrelenting. Their labor reshapes entire mountain slopes over generations. These fungi have inspired scientists to develop biomining devices that gather rare elements with significantly less harm than human equipment. Standing in front of a rocky outcrop and seeing that invisible fungal threads are silently consuming it, molecule by molecule, is like witnessing patience itself transformed into strength. Radioactive waste is a food source for certain mushrooms. Mushrooms occasionally thrive where human life fails. Scientists have discovered fungi flourishing on radioactively polluted rubble at Chernobyl and other contaminated locations. Melanin, the same pigment found in our skin, is present in these mushrooms. Here, however, it seems to have a different function. It appears to convert radiation into energy rather than just providing protection. A peculiar process known as radiosynthesis. Imagine mushrooms carrying out a sort of photosynthesis using radiation that we deem lethal rather than sunlight. These findings raise the possibility of amazing things. Fungi that could protect astronauts from the harshness of deep space or aid in the cleanup of radioactive waste. Mushrooms in disaster areas serve as a reminder that life can adapt to even the most unimaginable circumstances, turning peril into sustenance. What is poison to us is fuel to them. Evidence of nature's incredible capacity for surviving in seemingly inhospitable environments. Plants may have colonized land with the aid of mushrooms. The planet was desolate when the first green plants emerged from the seas and settled on land. Few nutrients, no soil, and bare rock. However, they weren't by themselves. Fungi were already there and prepared to form a partnership with them, as evidenced by fossils. These early partnerships made it possible for plants to obtain sugars in return for nutrients from rock that fungal networks shared. This partnership eventually produced the first thin soils, which paved the way for the emergence of grasslands and forests. Without fungi, the planet could still be bleak, silent, and arid, and plants might never have established themselves on land. Every grass blade, meadow, and tree has the imprint of this collaboration. You are walking on ground that was prepared by fungi hundreds of millions of years ago when you traverse a field today. This silent obligation is woven into the very fabric of the living green on our planet. Certain fungi and coral reefs collaborate. Although we typically associate mushrooms with forests, they can also be found in the ocean. It has been shown that marine mushrooms coexist with corals and weave invisible threads into the colorful reef architecture. These collaborations could aid in stabilizing delicate reef ecosystems, controlling nutrients, or shielding corals from infections. Marine mushrooms may be essential to coral reef survival under the challenges of climate change, while being less researched than their terrestrial cousins. The idea of having fun while floating among coral polyps makes it clear that the fungal world is not just found in soil and trees. In secret ways, it weaves life together as it extends into salt water. Fungi might be the ones who maintain reefs if corals are the ones who create them. Mushrooms and their relatives serve as a reminder that life is never alone, even under the waves. Partnerships are always the foundation of it. Both sexual and asexual reproduction are possible in mushrooms. Flexibility is something that fungi excel at. In an effective burst of reproduction, they can discharge spores asexually, creating countless genetic copies. They can quickly colonize thanks to this tactic, which enables them to spread through soil and air with incredible reach. In order to promote variation, fungi also reproduce sexually by sharing genetic material with other organisms. This enables them to adjust to new surroundings, pests, and changing weather. In order to increase their chances of surviving, some species even alternate between strategies based on the situation. Consider a creature that has two very distinct ways of producing more of itself, one for resilience, one for speed. Few other living entities can match that degree of adaptability. Every mushroom you see could be the result of a genetic mix or a cloning lineage. An outward reminder that mushrooms are made up of multiple ways of being. There are almost 20,000 distinct genders in some organisms. Reproduction in the fungal world pushes variety to incredible limits. The corresponding number of mating kinds, or genders, in some species is tens of thousands. For instance, the split-gill mushroom could have more than 23,000. These are compatibility codes encoded in their DNA, not genders in the human sense. It has the same effect. Reproduction prospects are maximized because almost any two individuals can mate successfully. This strategy ensures durability across generations by preventing inbreeding and promoting an astounding array of genetic combinations. Fungi expand the concept of gender into tens of thousands of options, whereas humans envision it as straightforward and binary. The mating system of a mushroom serves as a reminder that life is not limited to our classifications and offers a glimpse of the inventiveness of evolution itself. Diversity is not an exception for fungi. They are inherently bound by this rule. Trillions of spores can be released from a single puffball. A puffball turns into a sphere with a fine, powdery mass of spores inside when it reaches maturity. A smoky cloud can be released into the air in response to a raindrop, a fallen twig, or the touch of an inquisitive hand. A storm of microscopic life is what appears to be a puff of dust. Trillions of spores, more than the total number of people who have ever lived, can be released by a single enormous puffball. The majority of spores will drift off and land in areas that are too dry or unfruitful for growth. However, some will discover the ideal circumstances and establish new colonies, carrying on the family tradition. This tactic is all about numbers, using sheer abundance to overwhelm chance. It's like seeing the forest breathe when a puffball erupts. A moment of liberation where millions of possibilities disperse into the wind and invisibility becomes visible. High above urban areas, spores can be seen floating. The forest floor is not the only place in the fungus kingdom. Spores ascend on air currents that carry them higher and higher until they float well above buildings and rooftops. According to studies, they can be discovered mixed with dust and pollen in the sky thousands of feet above towns. Some are even carried into clouds, where they subsequently fall down onto far-off vistas as raindrops. In a city, spores and pieces of far-off forests, gardens and soils are present in every breath we take. We remain connected to the secret networks of fungi, despite being encircled by concrete. With spores acting as constant messengers, the air itself functions as a sort of bridge connecting the wild and the urban. The fungus kingdom is with you, floating invisibly above you and connecting your breath to ecosystems you might never see the next time you're strolling down a busy street. The world's weather may be influenced by mushrooms. Even though they are invisible, spores have the power to influence something as big as the weather. They are tiny and plentiful, rising into the atmosphere to serve as water droplet seeds. Clouds may develop around these particles. Fungi may thus play a silent role in Earth's climatic cycles by influencing the timing and location of rain. In addition to recycling nutrients below ground, forests may also summon rain by sending spores into the atmosphere to attract moisture to clouds. Although research is ongoing, the theory implies that mushrooms have a greater impact than dirt. They might even penetrate the atmosphere's basic patterns. Imagine rain accumulating around spores that have been released in a forest far away, then falling over fields and rivers days later. Fungi tell us that life flows upward, outward, and everywhere, blurring the boundaries between the ground and the sky. Heavy metals can be absorbed by some fungus. Fungi are frequently found to act as quiet healers in soils contaminated by human activity. Some mushrooms possess a remarkable capacity to absorb and retain heavy metals such as cadmium, lead, and mercury. Like sponges, their mycelial threads absorb toxins from their surroundings and concentrate them inside their frail bodies. There is promise for cleaning contaminated land without the use of chemicals, digging, or burning, thanks to a process known as micromediation. They have already fulfilled their function, converting poisoned land back into healthy soil, even though the mushrooms themselves are no longer fit for human consumption. Imagine mushrooms growing fiercely as living filters amid a damaged world that is polluted with garbage. They transform danger into something contained, acting as nature's alchemists. Through their peaceful work, Fungi reveals a pattern for resilience that shows that mending can start with the silent patience of threads in the soil, not with machinery, even in the most ravaged parts of the planet. Oil spills can be cleaned up with mushrooms. Damage from oil spills into water or soil can last for decades. However, fungi might have a sophisticated answer. The basic chemicals that make up oil, hydrocarbons, can be broken down by certain mushrooms into innocuous compounds. However, the enzymes secreted by mycelium break down poisonous sludge, turning black slicks into fertile soil that allows plants to thrive once more. In tests, fungus-treated landscapes transformed from greasy wastelands into blossoming fields in a matter of weeks. The soil breathes again, and insects and birds return. This method, which is a subfield of micromeditation, raises the possibility that mushrooms could help repair some of the most severe environmental catastrophes in human history. Imagine a shoreline that has been saturated in oil gradually becoming green again. Mushrooms are able to propagate their threads through the poisoned ground, not just because of human interference. It appears that the very organisms we frequently ignore in nature provide the remedy. Some mushrooms have a chocolate-like flavor. Although certain kinds of mushrooms surprise with their sweetness, mushrooms are typically associated with earthy, savory aromas. A few uncommon fungi emit scents and flavors that are similar to those of cocoa or chocolate. Researchers think that these flavors originate from special aromatic compounds, which are molecules that resemble the flavors that chocolate produces on our tongues. These chocolate-like mushrooms serve as a reminder of the variety of the fungal palette, even though they are not as popular as truffles or candy caps. In the heart of a forest, you may expect to smell damp earth and leaf mold, but instead you might smell something warm and delicious, like a bakery. Chefs may create unusual treats using wild fungi instead of cacao beans, thanks to these mushrooms. This is another way that mushrooms defy expectations by surprising people with their tastes, which can resemble an echo of human comforts, in addition to their shapes and colors. Others have lantern-like green glows. Some mushrooms in tropical jungles have a spooky glow that can make you stop dead in your tracks. The greenish glow of these bioluminescent mushrooms can occasionally be so intense that it illuminates nearby leaves. Luciferin and luciferase undergo a chemical reaction that produces the glow, which is comparable to the mechanism fireflies employ. Researchers think that by drawing insects at night, the light could spread spores to other locations. It appears as if the forest itself has lanterns on the ground, shining softly in the foliage when you come across them in the dark. Travelers have been telling tales of foxfire and fairy fire for years, enigmatic lights that glistened from decayed wood. We now understand that they are mushrooms that are displaying their latent brilliance. They serve as a reminder that life finds a way to shine through the dark, illuminating the night with tiny green beacons to tell its tale. In the past, mushrooms were as tall as trees. The landscapes of Earth were radically different hundreds of millions of years ago. The region was dominated by enormous fungus known as proto-taxites, long before there were tall pines or oaks. These odd creatures were the tallest living things of their era, reaching heights of up to 30 feet. In a world where insects had just started to fly, they rose like pillars and littered old landscapes. According to fossils, these giants might have resembled massive tree trunks, but they were fungi rather than plants. Picture a primordial plain with soaring fungal spires, alone against a desolate skyline. They broke down rock, created soil, and shaped ecosystems to prepare the ground for future trees. In the past, mushrooms dominated the planet, but today they are primarily tiny and ephemeral, defenders of a bygone era when the land's giants were fungus rather than trees. Certain fungi may endure total desiccation. Although most people believe that water is essential to life, some fungi can survive without even a drop of it. Some lichens and desert fungi may withstand total desiccation, drying until they appear to be dead. However, they reawaken and carry on growing as if nothing had occurred when the moisture returned. Special carbohydrates and proteins that keep their cells from collapsing under drought are responsible for their exceptional resilience. It enables them to settle in the most hostile deserts and rocky outcrops, which are inhospitable to most other creatures. Researchers look for hints on how life could exist on arid planets like Mars. Think of a little thread of fungus that has been brittle and dormant for years, only to come back to life when it rains. These organisms' silent perseverance demonstrates to us that sometimes the best way to survive is to wait for the proper opportunity rather than struggle against the environment. Experiments with mushrooms have been conducted in space. Fungi are being studied in space because of their peculiar endurance. Scientists have tested the survival of mushrooms and fungal spores in cosmic radiation and microgravity by sending them on spacecraft. To their surprise, a large number of mushrooms not only made it through, but also kept growing. In reaction to the harsh surroundings, certain species even appeared to adapt, changing their chemistry. According to these findings, fungi may be used in space missions in the future to produce food, recycle garbage, or even protect astronauts from radiation. It's even been suggested that resilient spores could make it through interplanetary travel and spread to new worlds. Whether this is accurate or not, the fact that mushrooms are in orbit serves as a reminder of how incredibly flexible life is. A fungus that can grow in space's vacuum challenges our conception of the limits of life and raises the possibility that Earth's hidden kingdom could have cosmic potential. Some fungi aid in the disease resistance of crops. Invisible allies are working beneath rice, corn, or wheat fields. In addition to providing nutrients, mycorrhizal fungi, which coexist with plant roots, also help plants resist illness. Fungi increase a plant's resistance to diseases and pests by boosting its immune system. They can even directly outcompete dangerous microorganisms, preventing them from damaging roots. By employing fungal inoculants, farmers are starting to capitalize on this long-standing collaboration and lessen their dependency on chemical pesticides. Imagine crops that are reinforced by silent underground allies, creating protective webs rather than by sprays. These alliances serve as a reminder that farming is a cooperative effort with nature rather than a conflict with it. Future farms may find their greatest resilience not in chemicals, but in the same common fungi that have been feeding plants for millions of years, much like woods live on fungal networks. Medicines that can save lives are made from mushrooms. Mushrooms and their relatives are chemical treasure troves that go beyond antibiotics. Fungi-derived compounds have been utilized to combat cancer, reduce cholesterol, and inhibit immunological rejection in organ transplant recipients. Fungi is the source of the medication lavoratum, which transformed heart care. A soil fungus was found to contain cyclosporin, which is essential for transplant recipients. In pursuit of the next discovery, concealed in a forest or meadow, researchers kept scanning the fungus kingdom. Mushrooms have been used in traditional medicine for ages. However, contemporary research is demonstrating the depth of their pharmacological abilities. Every mycelium cap and thread might contain a chemical that could one day save lives. In a way, strolling through the woods is like exploring a living pharmacy where remedies are patiently waiting to be found beneath the bark and moss within the silent labor of fungi. A fungus produced penicillin, the first antibiotic. In 1928, Alexander Fleming discovered that bacteria on a petri dish in his laboratory had been killed by the mold Penicillium notatum. Penicillin, the first commonly used antibiotic that helped save millions of lives during World War I, World War II, and beyond, was created as a result of this coincidental finding. Penicillium, despite not being a mushroom, is a member of the same vast fungal world, demonstrating once more how profoundly fungi have influenced human history. When penicillin was discovered, it revolutionized medicine by making fatal illnesses curable. It is encouraging to consider that a fungus growing in a forgotten dish was responsible for such a significant change, rather than human ingenuity alone. That mold had the ability to change the course of medical history, reminding us that, in unexpected ways, fungi are not just forest recyclers, but also protectors of human life. Wine ferments and bread rises because of fungi. Fungi are silently responsible for every loaf that rises in the oven and every glass that glitters at night. Yeasts are single-celled cousins of mushrooms that consume carbohydrates and release alcohol and carbon dioxide. The flexible net of gluten traps the bubbles in bread dough, causing the loaf to inflate like a wine dawn. Effervescence, or the quiet silence of a finished vintage, is the same breath. A sourdough starter is a microbiota unto itself. Yeasts, both cultivated and wild, coexist with beneficial bacteria that adapt to time, flour, and temperature. Through smell and sound, bakers are able to read its mood. Like a sleeping wave, there was a gentle hiss. Vintners also refer to terroir, in part in terms of microbes, which are the unseen substances made up of local yeasts that give grapes their flavor. Yes, fermentation is chemistry, but it's also a dance. One unseen breath at a time, fungi are guiding sugars towards celebration and sustenance. Whole artistic genres have been influenced by mushrooms. Mushrooms have long slithered from the forest floor onto paint, fabric, and paper, appearing in everything from embroidered folk motifs to gilded illustrated field guides. They have enticing silhouettes, stems that rise with the dancer's posture, frills and domes, and gills like cathedral vaults. Their shapes were borrowed by Art Nouveau. Their delicate hues were sought after by botanical illustrators. Ceramicists used rain-washed shine to glaze their caps. Contemporary designers create lamps, domes, and lattice screens by referencing the ribbed geometry underneath a hat. Nightwoods are transformed into constellations by photographers who descend low to capture bioluminescent halos. Even children's literature relies on the mushroom's fairy tale aura, which is a doorway to a little bright world and a sign of surprise. The allure extends beyond appearances. Mushrooms represent the emergence of worlds that are hidden until the correct circumstances are met. They are both familiar and exotic, which is why art keeps coming back to them, a whispering language of forms that invites closer inspection. Certain mushrooms have ultrasonic clicks that allow them to sing. Fungi's are mouthless. However, as mushrooms develop and the mycelium reorganizes fluid and pressure in their tissues, researchers who are recording extremely sensitive signals have picked up weak click-like bursts. The impression is captivating, but it's still unclear if these microsounds are actual singing or just little biomechanical releases. We seldom ever notice the frequency that a forest broadcasts. Electrical pulses that travel via mycelial threads, rhythmic spikes that accelerate, decelerate, and cluster like syllables are also measured by scientists in labs. Fungal pulses are transformed into ambient music by artists who convert those patterns into audible tones that fluctuate in response to touch, light, and humidity. If you listen for a while, you'll start to see a choir singing beneath the ground. Signals that coordinate stress reactions, resource sharing, or growth. The clicks serve as a reminder that living things have rhythms, and the rhythm of the mushrooms is exact and patient, much like the way a breath and heartbeat set the pace for a body, whether it be by language or byproduct. It has been discovered that fungi live inside rocks. Life turns to stone in deserts so arid that the wind seems to polish the world's bones. Endolithic fungi, which are as tough as old rope and as thin as hair, live inside mineral holes where temperatures fluctuate greatly and water arrives more as rumour than rain. They haunt the translucent skins of quartz in the arid valleys of Antarctica, drinking the faintly filtered light that seeps a few millimeters below. They have an old and practical chemistry. Pigments absorb radiation, acids eat minerals, and metabolism slows to the lowest ember, ready to ignite when a layer of meltwater returns. It would be too direct to state that life is resilient. Life is clever. These rock dwellers chisel patience into geology, writing their biographies in microns. You might discover a metropolis of filaments instead of emptiness when you crack open a stone. A reminder that the frontier frequently starts just beneath the surface of the earth, and that healing is more expansive than we realize. Ants can become zombies due to mushrooms. A spore contains a solitary seed of a fungus that is well acquainted with its host, while an ant walks beneath the green awning of a leaf. The fungus spreads inside like a whispered suggestion, slipping between muscles and leaving just enough brain space to control behavior. The ant, driven by chemistry, ascends to a height that is ideal for spreading, bites down on a vein in a death grip, and then freezes. Then, like a black flower, the fruiting stalk breaks through the exoskeleton and spreads spores across the forest trail below. This is the notorious story of the zombie ant. As accurate as clockwork, but nonetheless eerie. Its horror boiled down to evolutionary reasoning. The fungus puts its progeny in the right wind by directing behavior. Moralizing is not a feature of nature. It plans. Here, choreography is the plan. A bite, a climb, a silence. Additionally, a mushroom has the ability to release dust into the air. Fungi called cordyceps emerge from the bodies of insects. The little dramas of insect life are transformed into bizarre still lifes by cordyceps, the Gothic poets of the fungal world. A pedestal is formed by a hardened caterpillar. A tiny orange spear turns an insect into earth. Delicate antlers emerge from a spider that has been stopped in mid-air. Each species of cordyceps is particularly adapted for a certain host. Millions of years have gone into creating this loned fundamental intimacy. Enzymes soften beneath the surface. Hollows are filled with chitin threads. From within, the body is remapped until the fungus emerges to produce fruit. The webpage distorts our neat categories, which makes it disturbing. Parasite into gardener, animal into architecture. However, cordyceps also suppresses insect populations and replenishes the forest with nutrients, creating an ecological balance that is shown in the creepy sculpture. In order to be reminded that survival frequently takes on shapes we find attractive only after the initial chill has passed, it is both repulsive and captivating to observe one. Some mushrooms resemble miniature nests of birds. You might find a thimble-sized cup containing lustrous eggs if you kneel in damp leaf litter. These fungi, which belong to the Nigularia family, are bird's nest fungi, and those eggs are spool packets of peridot, prepared for a ride fueled by rain. The paradiles are spit out like pebbles from a sling when a drop hits the cup precisely. They hitchhike toward new ground by clinging to passing branches or fur with the aid of a sticky string. The impact angle, trajectory, bold geometry, and raindrop-scale design are all examples of flawless physics. Until you see them once, they are easy to miss. Then all of a sudden, there are tiny nests everywhere in the forest. At the highest point in the world, entire nurseries are silently running. The gap between imagination and engineering is closed by birds nesting fungus, a mathematically elegant version of a fairy tale. Every downpour is a wake-up call for the following generation. Others like fingers protruding from the earth. Clusters of blunt black clubs emerge from the ground in shady spots like a half-remembered hand. Xylaria polymorpha, or dead man's fingers, are initially blue-grey before becoming older. Coral fungi raise their pale, branching antlers in exquisite chandeliers elsewhere. These forms are just fruiting bodies designed to efficiently shed spores in flowing air, yet they deceive the sight by appearing gestural, reaching and beckoning. We projected the names of the macabres, our propensity to identify with everything. The theatre becomes silent as you look farther. These fingers are wood recyclers that mark the location of a former tree and are born from buried roots. The mycelium underneath endures as patiently as bedrock despite their ascent, spalling and weathering back to husks. The lesson is helpful. A lot of a life can be kept secret and still be the most accurate version of events. There are slime-covered mushrooms, shining caps beaded with a resin and rain varnish. You could practically see your reflection in some of them. The slimy appearance is more of a tactic than a peculiarity. A visit cap may shield sensitive tissue from drying winds and aid in moisture retention in bolite and sweller species. Slime the glebber wears a different mask in the brash stinkhorns, a filthy, sweet bait that attracts flies by imitating decomposition. They wear spores on their feet like dusting powder as they land, feed, and go. Trickery was used to pay a cab service. Slime reads like a warning to us. However, it is a toolkit for mushrooms. Raincoat, perfume, hydration layer, and billboard. Your fingertips become slimy when you touch one. A tactile reminder that functionality comes before beauty in the forest. Gloss has a role too. Mushrooms can be pink, purple, or vivid blue. The forest forgets its birth tones on some mornings. Jewel-bright petals are scattered amid brown foliage by indigo milk caps that bleed blue amethyst deceivers. On old meadows, wax caps rise in citrus yellows and sherbet pinks. The colors have a variety of uses: light-blocking pigments, antioxidants, insect signals, or just chemistry that goes hand in hand with other characteristics. Discovering a blue mushroom is like discovering a tropical fish in a puddle. It's a little shocking. Photographers seek out these moments: a violet stem against russet oak, a cobalt crown beneath moss. Color in fungi is a range of mishaps and survival tactics that appear miraculous to the human eye. Forests are not monochromatic, as the plague reminds us. They are windows of stained glass that have been set flat, illuminated by cloud light from above, and painted from below by the soil's silent chemistry. Even the most hostile deserts may support fungi. Fungi continue to exist in the arid quiet of deserts, where animals disappear into burrows and vegetation coil into thorns. Some live inside rocks, protected from the light and wind, and conceal themselves in enigmatic shapes. Others create living skins on stone by encasing themselves in lichens that link with cyanobacteria or algae. These collaborations use sunlight to produce food, and fungus stores moisture and offers shelter. Scientists have discovered fungal life subtly clinging to salt crystals and mineral veins, surviving on transient mists and dew, even in the Atacama Desert, one of the driest locations on Earth. They are incredibly resilient. They can withstand radiation, drought, extremes of temperature, and heat. The idea of mushrooms flourishing where nearly nothing else can is a stark reminder of the essence of survival. Even in places we consider dead, life whispers through fungi, repeatedly demonstrating that the limits of what is possible are much greater than we may imagine. Dinosaurs used to eat mushrooms. Fungi were present in primordial woods when dinosaurs roared through them, converting wood, recycling waste, and occasionally providing the giants with food. According to fossil evidence, mushrooms proliferated during the Cretaceous period and thrived in soils that were rich in decomposing plants. Herbivores may have grazed some of them alongside conifers and ferns. Like appetizers, their fucking bodies were pulled from the ground. Others formed partnerships with the roots that supported the woods that dinosaurs relied on. Picture a sauropod extending its neck across a swampy clearing, with dinner plate-sized mushrooms growing on the ground below. Fungi were already recycling nutrients to maintain the cycle of life in a world devoid of flowering plants. They served as both infrastructure and food, sustaining ecosystems and supplying people. Realizing that even giants walk on the silent foundation that mushrooms weave is what it means to believe that dinosaurs, symbols of unadulterated might, owed something to the simple mushroom. The age of fossil fungi is more than 400 million years. While bones and shells abound in the fossil record, mushrooms leave softer, rarer, and more delicate imprints. Nevertheless, we have discovered mineralized fungal remnants and impressions that date back more than 400 million years to the Devonian epoch. Fish were only just learning to walk, but fungi were already forming the land, as these fossils show by capturing filaments and spores preserved in prehistoric sediments. Mycorrhizal relationships are preserved in several of these fossils, evidence that fungi and plants were working together to colonize exposed rock and create soil even back then. Holding a piece of stone and knowing that it contains the ghost of a fungus that existed before forests, before insects flew to the skies, and before the majority of life had even left the water is a humbling experience. Every fossil serves as a window demonstrating that fungi were primordial architects present at the very beginning of the terrestrial world, not ancillary players. The earliest known fungus fossil dates back about 1 billion years. Scientists in the Canadian Arctic have found a petrified filament network that is about 1 billion years old, beyond our wildest expectations. As a result, fungi are among the oldest multicellular organisms yet discovered, existing hundreds of millions of years before plants. These shale-preserved threads show that long before forests existed, possibly even before animals evolved, fungi were experimenting with intricate patterns. Their existence raises the possibility that fungi weathered rocks and recycled nutrients on land and in the waters, so preparing the planet for later life. To imagine a fungus that is billions of years old is to face time on an unfathomable scale. These were creatures that flourished in a completely different environment from our own. However, their offspring continue to produce fruit in our kitchens and gardens. These early explorers left behind echoes of a world that was radically different from our own, and every mushroom we see now is descended from them. Perfect geometric patterns can be formed by mushrooms. Mushrooms can occasionally form remarkably accurate designs, such as arcs, spirals, or even full circles when they are fruiting. These forms are the result of a mycelium's normal underground expansion. The network pushes outward, sprouting mushrooms at the advancing edge as it expands, depleting nutrients at the center, from above. The outcome may appear nearly planned, as if geometry had emerged from the ground. Like sunflowers and shells, spirals may reflect the mathematics of growth, where form is determined by efficiency. It feels like a secret order has emerged when one discovers such a pattern in a meadow. Diagrams drawn by nature in live ink. These patterns serve as a reminder that process, rather than intention, is frequently the source of beauty, the silent hand of time, the flow of nutrients, and the physics of expansion. Under the forest canopy, mushrooms create silent symmetries, demonstrating their mathematical prowess. Certain spores are made to travel on insects. Not every spore floats aimlessly in the atmosphere. Some are made to cling to passing insects by being sticky, prickly, or wrapped with hooks that grab onto their legs, wings, or fur. As unintentional carriers, insects disperse spores to new areas that are well beyond the wind's reach. Some fungi expand on this collaboration. They ensure close contact by luring insects with flashing signals or sugary exudates. Others develop on leaves or blossoms, right where pollinators would walk by. The tactic is clever. When you can find passengers who are already traversing the terrain, why depend on chance? The trade is unseen to the insect. The fungus uses hitchhiking to lengthen its survival. Spores travel on wings like passengers on voyages into the unknown, trusting in the restless wanderings of the little animals of the air, and the forest is full of these silent trades where movement is cash. Mushrooms aid in retaining nutrients in soil. The world's recyclers are fungi, which reduce organic debris, wood, and dead leaves to their most basic forms. They release nutrients, but that's not all. They aid in keeping them in position. By binding soil particles together, mycelium stops nutrients from being washed away by rain. This produces a sort of living sponge beneath the surface of forests, storing carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus where roots can access them. In the absence of fungi, soil fertility would rapidly decline, depriving plants of nourishment. Fungi also play a part in agriculture by maintaining the stability and availability of nutrients for crops. Think of the subterranean web as a cautious steward that discreetly stores nutrients in specific areas until they are required. By doing this, fungi ensures that the land's richness continues by serving as both protectors and recyclers. They are inconspicuous stewards of soil health and fertility, preserving the silent equilibrium that sustains both farms and woods. For microorganisms, fungi build whole underground highways. Mycelium is a network for other things as well as for itself. According to studies, bacteria move more effectively across soil by following fungal threads, which operate as highways. Microbes are guided across otherwise insurmountable gaps by the stable surface provided by the thin filaments. In exchange, bacteria might form tiny alliances with the fungus by helping it or sharing nutrients. Innumerable microscopic species live and interact in this subterranean infrastructure. It is a secret network of roads, intersections, and interactions, invisible but essential. Many bacteria would be stuck in small soil pockets and unable to spread out if fungi weren't present. The earth turns into a thriving metropolis with them, teeming with commerce and traffic. It is incorrect to think of soil as empty dirt. It resembles a metropolis full of connections, with fungi acting as the engineers creating the highways that life must go on with their infinite threads. Some mushrooms have a fresh bread-like scent. You might detect a remarkably similar scent when you lift the cap of a field mushroom or a freshly harvested champ. Warm bread made with yeast just out of the oven. During fermentation, yeasts also create volatile chemicals that give off this scent. Shared chemistry between baking and fungus. The smell can serve as a sensory handshake between species and a cue to identification for foragers. It smells more than agreeable. Evolutionary strategy is what it is. Insects and animals may be drawn to aromatic compounds, which encourages them to come into contact with spores and spread them. The connection seems almost eerie to humans. Inhaling the scent of bread in the middle of a forest is like finding solace in an unexpected location, as if the wild and the kitchen had briefly blended together. It serves as a reminder that the lines we draw between the natural and the artificial are frequently not as clear-cut as they appear. Others have an anise or cinnamon scent. Not all mushrooms smell musty or earthy. Some emit fragrances that resemble spices from kitchens far away. While some milk caps have a strong cinnamon scent, some toadstools have a sweet, licorice-like anise scent. These aromas originate from aromatic chemicals that are either the same or very similar to those found in the actual spices. Walking through damp forests and discovering the aroma of a spice cupboard is a magical experience for humans. However, these smells serve as useful cues for the fungi to draw in insects or deter predators. Even though it seems like joy to us, their chemistry is survival. Mycologists frequently use smell to identify species, stooping to sniff out their unique scents. Every scent is a note in the forest's symphony, imperceptible yet distinct, serving as a reminder that mushrooms are both recyclers and chemists, transforming the air into scents that we remember for a very long time. Like sponges, mushrooms are able to absorb and hold water. Mushrooms swell rapidly after rain, sometimes doubling in weight in a single night. Their tissues are composed of specialized cells and chitin, which function as microscopic reservoirs and absorb water remarkably effectively. This characteristic enables them to bear fruit immediately following storms, showing up in forests and meadows virtually overnight. However, the mushroom is not the only use for the water. The moisture that has been absorbed can gradually return to the surrounding soil, forming microhabitats for seedlings, mosses, and insects. As living sponges, mushrooms control humidity and sustain life well beyond their own borders. Certain mushrooms' wet flesh is a well-known indicator of their tolerance to foragers. It is a survival tactic that has been transformed into generosity in ecosystems. Rain was recorded, saved, and disseminated. Every mushroom is not only a body, it is a vessel that softly releases the memory of rainfall into the forest's rhythms. Some fungi have a continuous day-long light. Natural lanterns that emit a greenish glow in the dark of the forest are called bioluminescent mushrooms. Some mushrooms glow constantly for days or even weeks, in contrast to fireflies, which only flash briefly. The same chemical dance between luciferin and luciferase that produces other glowing animals is the source of this light. According to scientists, the glow might draw insects at night, which would disperse the spores more widely than the wind could. Picture yourself strolling through a rainforest and noticing clusters of mushrooms that appear to be embers dispersed around the ground, glowing softly beneath ferns. The light is steady, tolerant, and oddly reassuring. It serves as a silent reminder that life continues to exist even after the sun sets. Travelers referred to it as fairy fire or foxfire for generations, tales emerging from the spooky splendor of luminous logs. Even though we now understand the chemistry, the magic still exists. The night is painted by fungi with a light that appears to emanate from the soil itself. Around the world, traditional rites have made use of mushrooms. Cultures all across the world have used mushrooms as a spiritual tool for thousands of years. Tiona, the flesh of the gods utilized in ceremonies to unite the heavenly and human, was a concept mentioned by the Aztecs in Mesoamerica. In order to achieve visions and altered states of consciousness, shamans in Siberia ingested the famous red and white mushroom, Amanita muscaria. Indigenous groups in Africa, Asia, and the Americas see mushrooms as gateways to learning and incorporate them into initiations, fertility rites, and healing rituals. The fact that mushrooms are liminal organisms that exist between life and decay, dark and light, and visible and invisible is something that these traditions acknowledged and that we still struggle with today. Mushrooms are still used in contemporary health and spiritual groups, investigated for their capacity to alleviate existential fear, sadness, and anxiety. They have served as more than just sustenance or poison for ages and continents. They have also served as guides to worlds both inside and outside of ourselves, as well as symbols of mystery and transcendence. Some mushrooms have the ability to launch their spores into the air. Some mushrooms use amazing mechanics to disperse their spores, but most rely on wind or rain. Pressure builds up in puffballs and inky caps until spores are discharged in smoky spurts. Even farther is the case for some species, such as Pilobelis. They fire the spores many meters away with explosive intensity. In order to send spores flying like tiny cannonballs, the secret is to create pressure inside small sacs and then release it in an instant. The act is imperceptible to the human eye, but when viewed under a microscope, it resembles little pyrotechnics. By using this tactic, spores are guaranteed to avoid the parent's shadow and land in an open area where they can flourish. At the fungal scale, the forest is alive with clouds, leaps, spurts, and unseen projectiles that propel the next generation onward. What appears to be motion is actually stillness, spores jumping continuously into the invisible air currents. A fungus has the quickest living movement on the planet. In the natural world, animals are typically the only ones with speed records. A mantis shrimp's punch, a cheetah's run. However, fungi have the fastest known living movement. The spores of the tiny, dung-loving fungus Pilobelis can travel over 20 meters per second, accelerating more than a bullet does when it exits a rifle. Pressurized capsules containing the spores create tension until they burst, launching the payload with incredible force. The distance traveled is enormous for something so little. At times, it exceeds 2 meters, which is 100 times the fungus's height. By doing this, spores are guaranteed to settle on new grass, where they can be consumed by grazing animals and spread. Realizing that a mushroom spore launch, rather than a predator's strike, is the quickest motion in biology is a revelation of power in an unlikely location. Fungi proves it once more, but the ignored frequently contain wonder. Some mushrooms look like sea life or coral. Coral fungi, which can be pale white or dazzling orange, grow in branching patterns on the forest floor that resemble ocean reefs. They split and morph into little underwater scenes that are projected onto the surface. They resemble waveforms that have been preserved in living form, giving the impression that the sea has overflowed into the woods. These similarities are the result of effective growth patterns rather than random occurrences. By maximizing surface area, branching enables the release of more spores into the atmosphere. But the end product is sculpture. Fungi that resemble flames, coral, or antlers. Some are as thick as bone, while others are as delicate as lace. Each serves as a reminder of how life adapts to different settings. Both marine coral and terrestrial fungi are architects that create beauty via repetition. A design language that is older than either reef or forest, and that quietly repeats itself across planets, is what it means to observe them. Others resemble miniature parasols or umbrellas. Clusters of exquisite mushrooms sprout in moist meadows after rain, their caps spreading like tiny umbrellas. Some are as thin as tissue paper, translucent and softly glow when exposed to sunlight. These delicate mushrooms frequently die after just 1 or 2 days. They are as ephemeral as morning dew. Nevertheless, they captivate the imagination during their brief existence. Insect parasols are microscopic homes found on the forest floor. They have a lyrical and utilitarian form. The stalk raises the spore-bearing gills into air currents, while the cap shields them below. They have evolved into symbols of simplicity that are readily recognizable as mushrooms in all cultures. Youngsters naturally sketch them. Biologists examine their mechanics, and fairy tales adorn them with spots. Yes, they are fleeting, yet they leave a lasting impression. The entire fungal kingdom is symbolized by this exquisite pattern, which rises in tiny with each rainstorm. The secret to carbon capture might lie in fungi. Removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere is one of the biggest problems of our time, and fungi might have some answers. For example, mycorrhizal fungi collaborate with trees to route plant sugars into deep soils, increasing subsurface carbon storage. For centuries, fungi have helped keep carbon from re-entering the atmosphere. In order to successfully retain carbon in stable forms, several fungi even synthesize molecules that are resistant to degradation. Researchers are looking for ways to promote fungal networks to increase this impact, which might make soils and forests more effective carbon sinks. Imagine combating climate change with living systems, invisible threads that reintegrate carbon into the planet rather than just machines. A possible partner in the fight against global warming can be found in the silent labor of fungi, demonstrating that answers might already be beneath our feet, patiently awaiting recognition. Other worlds could be terraformed with the aid of mushrooms. Fungi might be among our most reliable allies if humans ever settle on Mars or other planets. They can break down rock into soil, produce food, and even recycle garbage in enclosed spaces because of their resilience. Some fungi are valuable for creating life support systems in space because they can withstand radiation and low gravity. Even stronger, lighter, and biodegradable structures might be made from mycelium rather than being produced. Fungal biodomes are already being imagined by scientists, in which habitats are grown rather than constructed and grow like living structures. This vision is reminiscent of the time hundreds of millions of years ago when fungi helped prepare the earth for plants. They may once again be pioneers, bringing their age-old abilities to foreign areas. Humanity might not travel alone if it ever expands beyond Earth. Just like they did for this world, fungi might provide the groundwork for our future ones. Life on Earth could not exist without fungus. If you remove fungi from the Earth, life will cease to exist. Nutrients would disappear from soils, forests would suffocate on their own litter, and cycles of renewal and decay would come to a standstill. Most plants couldn't get enough nutrients to survive without fungal relationships. Additionally, animals, including humans, would go without sustenance in the absence of plants. Fungi maintain the ecosystems that create and recycle oxygen, including the oxygen humans breathe. Fungi are Earth's silent engineers, recyclers, companions, and healers. They operate invisibly, yet it would be disastrous without them. Fungi maintain the equilibrium of the system, which is why every meal, breath, and verdant environment exists. Realizing that mushrooms are not incidental characters in the tale of life is necessary to comprehend this. They serve as its cornerstone. The play of life could never start without them, and the stage would be empty. Thus, our peaceful exploration of the kingdom of mushrooms comes to a close. We've explored a world that is both hidden and necessary, delicate and unbreakable, from spores traveling on invisible breezes above the city to fungal networks older than trees themselves to illuminating lanterns in the nighttime of the forest. We are reminded by mushrooms that life is not always loud or obvious. Under our feet, a great deal of this planet's work is done in silence, using threads so thin that they can pass through stone pores. Fungi impart metamorphosis, perseverance, and patience. They feed giants and insects equally, stall water for the thirsty, recycle death into life, and even use underground networks to whisper to plants. Without them, there wouldn't be any woods growing toward the sky, no bread rising in ovens, and no equilibrium in the never-ending cycles of the planet. Imagine the steady, peaceful heartbeat of the soil, the gradual pulse of the mycelium beneath you as you allow these ideas to rest. Imagine spores spreading possibly throughout the atmosphere like stardust. To remind you that life persists even in the shadows, picture the glow of mushrooms in the silent, gloomy forest. The comfort of science presented slowly is this, that we will never be able to truly comprehend how rich, odd, and interrelated the world is, and that we can catch a glimpse of the remarkable in the commonplace by stopping to observe. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you have enjoyed this adventure and would like to explore more worlds of wonder and inquiry. It fosters the growth of our little group of idealists and scientific enthusiasts. You don't need to do anything else right now, though. You can let the mushroom tale fade away like the final rays of daylight, leaving nothing but peace. Allow sleep to gently transport you if it arrives. You are free to stay, listen again, or let the next film carry on your exploration of the universe's hidden treasures if you are still awake. Rest comfortably, and never forget that there are many undiscovered wonders in the world. Sometimes, like mushrooms after rain, they appear overnight. Sometimes, beneath the surface, they have been waiting for you the entire time.